The main purpose of my lecture today is to encourage the young scientists that how deep one can go in research, whereas from the surface you don't see anything, but if you go into the detail of anything, you can bring out several important information for the mankind. So with this note, I would start my lecture. So can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Should I can do like this? This will be much better. Yes. So is it good? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very fine.
Thank you. The topic of my today's lecture is corals and their significance. As we all know that corals are marine organisms and they are considered, the coral reefs are considered marine equivalent of tropical forests. So whatever benefit you get from the tropical forest on land, the coral gives even more ideas and more items for the mankind. It helps more to the marine organisms as well as the terrestrial organisms. So this is the picture from Indonesia, whereas a coral is growing in its full bloom. Now my lecture would be divided into some subtopics. For example, favorable environmental conditions for rebuilding corals, geographical distribution of corals, how different types of corals can be identified, morphology of corals, how can we measure the dimensions in corals, classification of corals, geological distribution of corals, significance of corals, and how corals are used in reconstruction of environmental parameters, and finally, how can we protect corals? So these are topics, although for many people this is quite new, so I will try to talk in such a way that you will be able to understand at least most part of it. So first is, what is the favorable environmental condition for reef forming corals? So here you see, this is a profile of sea and land. On land you have lacustrine environment, fluvial environment, and then you have intratidal, and then below intratidal you have subtidal environment. This is subtidal environment. So coral mostly lives in subtidal environment. Coral always live underwater. It cannot sustain any supratidal environment, and it lives in shallow, warm, well-lit, means light should be sufficient, energetic and clear water condition. At tropical water temperature about 25 to 28 degree with salt content of 35 to 40 per mil. Per mil means per 1,000 here, per mil. So this is the normal salinity of marine water. So most coral can grow only in normal saline water. Now on the right hand side bottom you see the picture of cross section of a coral where you can see the skeletal part as well as the soft part. The soft part of the coral is called polyp, whereas the skeletal part is called corallum. So we have to remember these two words. Corallum is the word for the hard part, which is generally preserved in fossil, and polyps are, since it's a soft part, it is easily decayed in fossil because the soft part cannot sustain the diagenetic processes in which the rocks are formed. The picture on the top shows the polyp, different types of polyp. It looks like a flower. And you see the corals belong to Clark and Kutuba and It's called anthozoa, and antho means flower-like, and zoa means organism. So flower-like animals is the class of coral.
Yes.
On the left bottom, you see it's a corallum, a complete coral skeleton. And in coral skeleton, you see these pits. These pits are the upper surface of one corallite. So one corallum consists of several corallites, and the top part is called calyx. So here also you see this is one corallite, and the top is calyx. This is another corallite, third corallite, fourth corallite, like this. Now the distribution, if you see the worldwide distribution of corals, it is found in the tropical zone because you need sufficient temperature for coral and salinity. So you see broadly, it is Indo-Pacific area. This is Indo-Pacific area between South and North America on the right side, and the left side is Asian countries. And then it is found in Red Sea. Here is the Red Sea. And then we have the Western Atlantic part. So Western Atlantic part is on the other side. Here, this one. This is the Caribbean Sea, and the Bahamas is on this side. So these are three main localities, regions for coral development, and the corals are mostly confined to subtropical tropical area, which is 23 degree north to 23 degree south from 0 degree equator. Now, if you come to Indian subcontinent, so this is Indian subcontinent, and you see the corals are, everybody knows that corals are found in Andaman and Nicobar Island, and they are living corals. Then we have Gulf of Mannar. Gulf of Mannar is here on the southern tip of India, and this is also living coral. Then we have Lakshadweep Islands. So Lakshadweep is archipelago of 35 islands here, and all these 35 islands are coral islands. They are growing on basalt substrate of Deccan Trap. Then we have Saurashtra coast. On the western part of India here, Saurashtra, there is called Narara Lagoon, very famous lagoon here on this side, and it is also a protected area, marine park, and corals are abundant in this area. So these are four localities in India where living corals are found. Coming to the fossil corals, we have very important Kutch Basin in Gujarat, where the fossil corals of Jurassic and Tertiary periods are found. Then next is about we have corals of Jurassic and Cretaceous, Jurassic, Cretaceous and Tertiary, and then we have the southern part of India, Kaveri Basin, where corals are found in tertiary rocks, in Cretaceous rocks and tertiary rocks. So this is overall picture. We also get some corals along the Himalayan range in Spiti area, which is not shown here. So mostly these are the main localities or regions where the coral can be found. I want to show some field photographs. This photograph is from Saurashtra. It's an underwater photograph. You see my hammer is lying inside water. And this is Poraitis. The genus is called Poraitis. Normally, if you count the recent corals, which are very common all over the world, are Poraitis. The other is called Favia. Then Favitis. Like this, these are very important corals, and Acropora. So you have to remember these four names: Poraitis, Favitis, Favia, and Acropora. So this is one photograph. Normally this is a massive coral. The surface should be very smooth, but in this case you see the tubular structures. This is in order to combat the turbidity of water. The Saurashtra area has got a lot of turbidity, because of Indus Valley, because of the Indus River. Indus River brings lot of sediments and puts into the Arabian Sea, and along the long shore currents, the turbid or the sediments come even to Kutch area, to Saurashtra area, and the corals are not developing very good in this area. They are not very healthy. But in order to combat the turbidity, the coral has grown into tubular structure in order to shade the sediments to the side, from the top of the coral to side. Now this is the close-up of Poraitis. You see, when you see closely Poraitis, you see these microstructures which we can discuss later on. So both are the Poraitis, different species, and the different species can be identified on the basis of the microstructures inside the corallite. So this is one corallite, and these microstructures, which we will discuss later on, can be used for identification of different genera of corals. So these are some photographs from Saurashtra area also. This is Favitis and Favia. You see, this is Favia. This is also called as moon coral, and this is Favitis. You see slightly change in the character from this side. Here, each corallite has got different wall, but here the corallite, between two corallite, there is a common wall, like this. And what we do, we also make thin sections of these corals. So this is one of the longitudinal section, and here it is very enlarged. You see some microstructure inside, we will discuss. Here also this is very enlarged, some microstructure. So we have to study the upper surface of coral, then we have to study the broken surface of the coral. This is one corallite with some structures, and then we have to study corals, a longitudinal section, thin section. The thickness of thin section is about 0.03 mm. There is a special machine for this, so we can study the thin section and identify corals. Now this is one, corals are generally sessile organisms. They are fixed at one place like a tree, but there are some corals which are mobile. And one of the example is called Fungia. This is a mobile coral. This can crawl on hard substratum. Now this is another example of mobile coral which is found in East Bay. East Bay is this part of the bay where this type of coral, this is the United States of America and very near to Auckland, East Bay. Here the corals are found, this Fungia, the mobile corals are found in abundance. Now in addition to these corals, we also have red corals, and red corals are commonly known as Muga, and the technical name is Corallium rubrum. And Corallium rubrum is found mostly in Mediterranean Sea. Here see the Mediterranean Sea is shown at the bottom of the slide. This is Mediterranean Sea, the south of Italy and north of northern part of Africa. And the character of this is that this occurs in black, white, red, gray, pink and orange, and the chemical composition is calcium carbonate, and its hardness generally we consider in geology the hardness of a mineral, so which is very important character for any further use. So this coral is about 3 to 4 hardness of Mohs hardness scale. This is standard hardness scale, and this can be scratched with knife. And then transparency, and then it is luster, is vitreous and waxy. That's why it is considered as gemstone. This coral is called, it's a gemstone coral. Then similarly, we also have another coral which is called red coral, and but it is not as used as Muga. It is called Tubipora musica. So it is also a red coral. Both types of red coral, they are considered as soft corals because their external surface is covered with polyp. The soft, it is covering from all the side of skeleton, so it is considered as soft corals. These corals are also found in Indian Ocean. Their main locality is Indian Ocean, Tubipora. Now there are some more examples where in Kutch area we have coral meadow. Coral meadow means it is not making a reef, but isolated corals are scattered, and you can collect tons of corals from this area, several trucks of coral in one day. So much coral have been preserved. Then these are some rock fragments where we have different types of coral. Some are elongated, branching, and some are massive. These are all isolated corals which are commonly found in Kutch Basin or in Jaisalmer Basin, and we have identified these corals into different genera. So this is the larger picture of coral, and here see on the corallum you have a serpulid and crusting. So while we study the morphology of corals, we also study what are other organisms either encrusting the hard surface or they are boring into the hard surface. Here there is a bore and this is encrusting organisms, and these features are helpful in reconstruction of paleo environment. So this is another picture. Here we see only one corallite in one corallum, and here we see three corallites or four corallites in this corallum. So number of corallites in one corallum may vary from 1 to several. Now these are some branching corals from Saurashtra. This is exposed now on land. Earlier it was a living coral, but now it was a Pleistocene or Tertiary period, and now it has been preserved. In present, this is called Acropora, and Acropora is you cannot find Acropora now in the living form in Saurashtra area, whereas in Lakshadweep or in Andaman and Nicobar you have abundance of Acropora. And the main reason of absence of Acropora is the main reason is the turbidity in this area. Now we come to morphology of coral. As I explained, there are two parts. One is the hard part, another is the soft part. Soft part is called polyp, hard part is called corallum. Now we can study the morphological features into 4 subheadings: the radial elements, axial element, endothecal elements, and exothecal elements. So radial elements, if you go to radial elements, you see they radiate from the center, towards the center. From the wall side, it radiates towards the center. And this is also a cup-like structure where you have shown 2 radial elements, and these radial elements are called septum as a singular and septa is a plural. So we have 2 septa here, and you see each septum is consists of several palisade or several rod-like structures, and these rod-like structures are called trabeculae. It is called trabeculae, and the trabeculae, singular is trabecula, here it is written, and the trabeculae, each trabeculum consists of several ball-like structures which is called sclerodermite, a ball-like structure which is called sclerodermite, and each ball-like structure you have a center of calcification, and then aragonite fibers are growing at the top. Now you can imagine the scale of this coral. Suppose this coral is of 1 centimeter diameter, what would be the size of this trabeculum? one trabeculum will be less than 0.1 millimeter and less than 0.1 millimeter, then you have in each trabeculae several sclerodermites, and several sclerodermites will be of micron size. And even if you go further inside the sclerodermites, here you have center of calcification, which is even less size than micron size of nano size. So you can imagine, at the moment we don't know what is inside, what is the nature at the center of calcification, whether this is organic matter or this is made up of calcite or this is made up of aragonite. So this is a subject matter of biotechnology or nanotechnology, where people can understand why this is important, because the main structure, what type of structure coral will form, all depends upon the genetic relationship of these sclerodermite, the center of calcification. So depending upon the environment in which the coral is living, depending upon the behavior of the coral, which in turn depends upon the genetic character of coral, different types of coral skeletons are formed. And so once we understand the nucleus of sclerodermites, we will be able to understand on the basis of structure of coral at what environmental condition in which the coral has lived. So this is septum, and there are several types of septum. See here, in this septum there are different pores. Here there are different ledge-like structure or granule-like structure. There are pores on the inner side. Here it's a different ornamentation. So we have different types of ornamentation. We have different types of structure of septum, and these are the basis of classification of corals and identification of different corals. So broadly we can say that we have endothecal elements, we have exothecal elements, we have thecal elements. Now in this case, endothecal elements means the elements which is inside the wall. This is the wall. So inside the wall, what type of structure we have inside the wall, and then what type of structure we have outside the wall, and what type of structures we have along the wall. So there are several structures inside the wall, outside the wall, and along the wall. And these structures, which is commonly called as discipiement and septum, epitheca, synapticuli, trabecula, septal pores, all these structures can be useful for identification of corals. So here it's a living example where we found a broken surface. We don't break corals actually, but when you get a broken surface, you can see these are different septa. See, these are all radial elements, and along the inner edge of the radial sediments, there are denticles, dentitions-like structure, and on the lateral surface of the septum is some granules which are arranged in a particular fashion. So this arrangement is also important to identify a coral. And then between two adjacent septa, we have discipiments. These discipiments are the floor they are considered as floor for polyp. So polyp rests on this convex structure, and sometimes they are horizontal. So like here, see here, this is more or less inclined. So these were once floor for polyp. And in the center, which is the axial structure which goes like this, is called columella. So this is one simple cross section where we can see that each corallite consists of septa. These are radial structures. Then we have in the center is axial structure, which is columella. Then we have endothecal structure like synapticuli or discipiment. and then we have the wall thecal structure, which is wall of the particular corallite. Now, we see this is very important to understand how polyp makes the skeleton. Gradually, what happens, this is one floor, the polyp has made a floor, and the polyp is resting on this and then holding this edge and then contracting itself up, and then finally another floor is created. So contraction, expansion, how coral contracts to make a new floor here and then expands upward to grow the upper edge of septa. So septa is growing at one time, and then second time the floor is forming at the base. So, and this is also important to know because the time of formation of this floor is quite near to formation of this edge of septum, and it is important to know because when you take the oxygen and carbon isotope study from the skeletal matter of coral, then you may not correlate this with this because these are of different time interval. You have to correlate specimens from this area and from this area. So sometimes people just take sample from different places on one septum, that will be correct. But if you take sample at random from this and this, then this will be quite different from time-wise, quite different from each other. So the same thing is written here. Now we come to another example where analog of climbing steps like this. So first coral put the floor, use this floor, and then lift this surface and put the polyp on the other floor. So it goes alternately from here to here, here to here. So these structures are meant in such a way that coral can move upward and grow, able to grow the skeleton. And these corals are called pennular corals, and the structure is called pennular structures, which is also important in identification of this type of coral. So another example, mode of rhythmic coral, rhythmic growth of septa with pennular structure. So how the soft part is moving upward one by one, like this, using the pennulae or pennular platforms. So how it is rising upward, it is shown here. Now we can measure the dimension of coral. Suppose this is a coral, if we see center of coralite, so we can measure the center of coralites. We can measure the center of coralites in one circle or in next from the center of coralite of the central coral to center of coralite of the next circle. Then we can also measure the diameter of, this is the diameter of corallum and this is the height of corallum. All these things are useful in understanding the nature of coral or in identification of corals. So now about this, after this we have the how we can classify, because to understand any group of organism, the classification is very important, and we have classified organisms on the basis of mode of occurrence, and on the basis of this we have two types of corals. One is hermatypic coral and other is ahermatypic coral. Generally the reef building corals are hermatypic corals. Not all corals on reef are reef building, but there are maximum number of corals on reef are reef building. They are hermatypic. And ahermatypic corals are non-reef building corals. They can be found anywhere. We have an example of this reef building coral. This is also from Indonesian Gulf. And then we have a non-reef building coral from the Kutch, Jurassic rocks of Kutch, and this is from Jaisalmer area. These are non-rebuilding corals, and I have identified it as a Prococyathus, and these are different genera where the Poraitis and other genera like Dimorpharia and Microsolena dominates in this coral meadow. So we have non-rebuilding and we have rebuilding corals. This is another example of a hermatypic coral, and mostly they are solitary, but this is colonial, and these are in present day Lophalia and Dendrophylia. These are non-rebuilding corals, and they can be found up to a depth of about 900 meters because they don't need mandatorily light, so they can also live without light. I will explain to you how later on. So now the second criteria to classify corals, one is symbiotic relationship with unicellular algae called zooxanthellae. So zooxanthellae is a unicellular algae, and there is a symbiotic relationship of coral with the algae. And if the coral has this zooxanthellae, you know the algae, in order to have this photosynthesis, should live in water, in photic zone. Should live in photic zone. So all those corals which have got symbiotic relationship should be found only in photic zone in shallow water region, and all those which are without a zooxanthellae, without unicellular algae, they are usually ahermatypic and they can be found anywhere. So it is because of the symbiotic character, most reefs are found in photic zone in shallow water environment, and these zooxanthellae are found in the epidermis. See here, no, it's a gastrodermis. So it is in the inner wall of the polyp. They are found in the gastrodermis, and we have epidermis, we have mesogloia, and we have gastrodermis. These are three layers in polyp of corals. Now third is on the form and growth structure of corals. So in form and growth structure, we have colonial corals and we have solitary corals. So this is another classification. In solitary corals, we have corallum with one corallite, all these corallums with one corallite, and in colonial corals, we have several corallites. See, and then within this, there are several growth structures. Like here, we have branching corals, and this is fasciculate, where mostly the branches are parallel to each other. Here, the branches are diversified. Then we have fossilized corals, exactly parallel, and then we have flavellate coral. The shape is different. We have meandroid coral, so different corallites are forming a valley. We have plocoid corals, we have serioid corals, and we have thumnostoroid corals. The main difference between the three here, all these corallites have got their individual walls. Here, the wall between two corallites are common, and here there is no wall between the two adjacent corallites. So here is a more integration. Here is the less integration. It is like present day colony that everybody makes its wall, boundary wall, and this is more like in the United States or in Germany, where the people don't need wall. They are more integrated to each other. And integration means you share everything with each other. And these solitary corals are based on their basal angle. If the basal angle is 30 degree or less than 30 degree or more than 30 degree, we have different shapes. And if it is cylindroid, means the two sides are quite parallel to each other. So like this, on the basis of the basal angle, on the basis of their shape in solitary corals, and on the basis of their branching the nature of ball, different types of corals have been identified. These are ramos, massive, foliaceous. So one can see these structures in different corals and which can be useful in identification. Now, depending on the mode of budding, corals can be identified, and if the budding, there are two types. Intratenticular budding means the budding is taking place inside the ball, and extratenticular budding means the budding is taking place outside the ball. So new corallite is coming outside the ball. Here it is shown. This is parent corallite and this is child corallite. So it is coming outside the corallite, and here first it is coming inside the corallite and gradually it will be separated. So there are two types of budding. Then this is one corallite we discovered from Iran, and this is called showing extracallicular budding. If I say callicular means I'm talking about the fossil, and if I say tentacular, I'm talking about the living coral. So this is very well arranged in hexameral symmetry, a coral which is called hexafloss. This is called hexafloss, and this shows extra-tentacular or extracallicular budding. And budding is very symmetrical. See, this is the lower surface and this is the upper surface. Now about the geological distribution, you see this is the geological time scale. We have Paleozoic, Mesozoic and Cenozoic. And in Paleozoic we have Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, Permian are the periods. And then Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous in Mesozoic, and Tertiary and Quaternary in Cenozoic. Now broadly fossil corals can be divided into three orders. One is order Tabulata, one is order Scleractinia, and one is order Rugosa. Order Scleractinia depends upon the because it has sclerodermites. We can easily see sclerodermites, whereas in Tabulatum there is no septum in this case, and in Rugosum we have both tabulum and the septum. Certainly the septum is not, it is divided, it has got symmetry of 4 septum, and this has got symmetry of 6 septum. So there is a difference between this and this, but we know that the order Scleractinia, which is found in present day, these are all extinct orders, and this is found in present day from Middle Triassic to Holocene. This consists of aragonite, but we don't know whether, because these are quite old, we don't know whether the skeleton was made up of calcite or aragonite later on recrystallized to calcite, because when the coral grows, the aragonite is metastable state, and after the death of the coral, the aragonite can easily change to calcite. So like this, there are three groups, important groups of stony coral, I would say, or corals with skeleton, which is found in geological history, and that can be used in reconstruction of paleo environment. Now it is just to show a similar feature where we have rugosa and we have tabulata, and we do not know what happened. We don't know whether the Scleractinia was derived from rugosa or it was derived from tabulata, and because we don't have any coral between late Permian to early Triassic. So we have Scleractinia from Middle Triassic to Holocene, and this rugosa and tabulata extinguished at the end of Permian. So this part is empty. We don't have any knowledge. This is a subject matter of research, whether people can find more corals in this particular time interval, so we can know how Scleractinia was evolved, whether from tabulata or from rugosa. Now we have seen several shapes of corals, several forms of corals, but actually the microstructures which is inside the coral are more valuable than morphological ones as systematic criteria for sclerectinian corals. So we don't have to see the outer shape and outer structure of the coral in order to identify, but we have to see the microstructure, and that's why cutting into thin section is important. Now we will discuss why corals are important. The first thing, as I told to you, that as far as biodiversity or its potential are concerned, they are marine equivalent of tropical forests, so we must save corals. The second is they are paradise underwater. You see, they look very beautiful because wherever you have corals of different colors, you also have fishes of different colors and many other organisms of different colors. So it's a paradise underwater. Then we have nursery and breeding ground for a variety of organisms, including plants. So wherever coral live, a lot of other organisms also live. Then it's a very important place for fishery production. If you go to Saurashtra area, if you go to Okha area, there are several labs where they experiment on fishery production because of the coral reef in this coastal areas. Then it is quite useful for shore protection from erosion. If there are coral reefs, the shore can be protected from the strong waves, and the best example is Lakshadweep area. Then corals are of medicinal value because the calcium carbonate is natural calcium carbonate, and the calcium carbonate, in addition to that, there are many other elements which are found in, because the coral skeleton is a storehouse of all the oceanic events that has taken place from time to time. So you get lot of elements, natural elements from coral skeleton, and one of the most recent medicinal use is of bone grafting. So if you somehow if you have an accident and if your one leg is smaller than other leg, you can use this skeleton as a part of your bone. You can add to your bone because the porosity of bone is very much similar to porosity of coral skeleton. So it is being used in bone grafting. Now we have resources for house building. This is not done now. In older time, people were also using these calcium carbonate for cement industry, but this is prohibited. Now we have ornamental use, as I told you, munga, red coral and black coral. Then any other coral can also be used as ornamentation. Then the corals are indicator of climatic changes. I will explain to you how corals can be used for climatic change and global warming. And then indicator of sea level change, how in the past sea level has changed. And then reconstruction of paleoecology. Paleoecology is sum of biotic and physical environment. So we can use coral for understanding paleoecology because this is coral reef in itself is a ecosystem. And then we can use coral for paleogeography because corals always live, the hermatypic corals always live in shallow water. So wherever you have hermatypic coral in geological record, you can trace the shallow water area, and then you can trace land and sea distribution in the geological past. So these last few are more useful for geology than other things, significances. Now, so we have to see that corals are so significant. We have to see because coral reefs are one of the most diverse ecosystem on planet and are home for 25% of all marine life. Imagine 25% of all marine lives live in the coral reef, and then they are home for more than 4,000 species of fishes and 700 species of corals and thousands of other species of plants and animals. You can imagine how much biodiversity one coral reef has, and then the foundation of every coral reef start with rebuilding coral. The coral reefs are formed only when there is a coral coming, and that particular coral which starts reef building is called acropora. Acropora settles down first and then it builds coral reef, and acropora doesn't need any nutrition supply. So the coral can grow at a place where there is no nutrition supply, and they can grow because of the photosynthesis with the help of zooxanthellate, algae, and then gradually when the coral reefs are formed, then because of the nutrients provided by corals, because they produce nitrates and the fishes start coming, and then the fishes also produce nitrates. So a lot of other organisms are coming, they come to coral reef because they get a very good, suitable environment, and they also get protection because between the coral there are spaces where many organisms can hide themselves. And some reef building corals are special because they are thriving in unexpected places. So there are examples where you would not imagine a coral reef, but still you can find coral reef, for example, deep sea corals. So this is one example where there are several types of corals where you have places an organism can hide inside these corals, and this is an example for Caribbean Sea. Example of Caribbean Sea reefs in Tela and Roatan, Honduras. So this is Caribbean Sea. This is northern part of South China, South America, and this is eastern part of America, United States of America. You have Gulf of Mexico, and we have Caribbean Sea. So this picture is from Caribbean Sea, and you have different types of coral where animals can hide themselves and can live very freely. Now about the coast protection, you see this is a photograph from Lakshadweep Island where the sea wave is encroaching and eroding the coastal area in this case. And then if you have coral reef here, see here there is a coral reef, although it's a dead coral reef, but it is protecting the reef from corrosion, from erosion. So coral reefs are best structure for the shore protection from erosion. Here you see there is not adequate number of coral reef, so we have to put extra blocks of cement in order to protect the island. This you can also see in Marine Drive. In Mumbai, lot of blocks have been put along the Marina Beach, where you can, along the Marine Drive, where you can to protect the shore area or the coastal area. Now for the medicine, you see, doctors are trying hard to use coral for skeletal repair. Here you see there is a hole in the coral, in the bone, and this scaffold, that is of the rod of a coral, has been fixed inside this damaged section of bone, and gradually you see the bone accepts, and now the bone is completely, the scaffold is completely inside the bone. So like this, with the help of coral skeleton, you can use use for bone grafting. So corals are used in cosmetic and reconstructive surgery as a substrate for growth of new bones. So this is a recent phenomena. It was published in 2005 and then 2013. People must be working on this also. Now I will use corals for reconstruction of environmental parameter. I think the time is coming close. So, but I will just go very quickly that how corals can be used for reconstruction of value environmental parameters. Now here you see the coral skeleton shows plastic behavior. This is the fundamental, because coral skeleton can change its structure and dimension on the basis of changing environmental condition. That's why it is useful in reconstruction of the paleo environment. So because of the environmental stress, if the coral has got less light, it will grow in different shape. It has got less turbidity, it will have a different shape. If it has less energy in water, it will have different shape like this. So there is a environmental stress, and because of the environmental stress, coral can grow in different shape and sizes. So I will give you one example here. This is a simplified model of growth of corallite. This coral is encrusted, means it is attached to substratum. And if you see how the coral is growing like this, so there is no possibility of growing, or there is a limitation in adding another new corallites along the periphery in this coral because of the limitation, because this is the encrusted coral. And encrusted coral means it is growing on the hard substrate. And if you take another example where the coral is attached, not encrusted, then you see the coral can grow also along the periphery like this. So depending upon one thing, one substrate, if substrate is hard and substrate is soft, different types of coral structure can be found. Now, in this case, if you see the size of colony and the size of corallite, if the size of corallite in this side is increasing, it means the corallite here in the convex part you have more larger corallites than in the concave part. In the concave part you have smaller corallites. It is all because of the space problem. You have initially it was a hemispherical shape, but gradually it become flattened, and flattened can be of two types. In one case the corallite size is smaller, and where you have this concave surface, and here you have less pronounced concave surface. This is flattened shape. Same thing is here, it is hemispherical, and then if there is less light it will become flattened, and if it is more light it will be less flattened, because you need more light, more area to acquire light, because light concentration is less. Here light concentration is more in shallow water environment. So the size of corallite is a constraint for the shape of the colony, and in a single species you can find several shapes and several size of corallites. So the main environmental parameters which can be understood from corals are nutrition supply, salinity, water energy, oxygen, turbidity, substrate, rate of sedimentation, depth, light, and temperature. And I will go very fast because time is running short. So I want to say the salinity can be understood on the basis of coral, because the carbonate production in coral skeleton has been correlated with salinity, and we have found one example from the Kutch Basin where we have found that this grew in low salinity water condition. Then water energy can be understood from the corals. It is a fragile branching in less water energy, and it is strong of this shape in high water energy. Then the attachment of polyp with the hard surface also determines whether the coral, whether the energy was high or energy was low. I have one analog. If the muscle is attached oblique, it behaves like a coat hook, and if the muscle is attached perpendicular, this behaves like a light bulb. You cannot hang your coat here because this is very weak. So according to the energy, the muscle is attached on the coral skeleton, and that can be understood on the basis of shape of calyx, like this here. So this is flat 4, very poor, and this is strongest here. When it is oblique, it is strongest. So like this, and there are some examples. Water energy can be understood, then turbidity can be understood. Can you hear me all? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So turbidity can be understood because the corallite size is very small and here, and when the fine grain sediments were deposited, and corallite size is very large when the coarse grain sediments are deposited. And Acropora, as I told you, they have got very tiny corallites, and they cannot survive in turbid water condition. So this is how turbidity can be understood on the basis of size of corallite and the absence of Acropora. Then similarly, this is also another example we explained already, the shape of this poraitis, why it has formed like this. Then we have substrate. We have understood that this has got larger, harder substrate, and this is small substrate, and here there is no substrate. So on the basis of the attachment area, we can understand the nature of substrate. On the basis of shape of the coral, we can understand the rate of sedimentation. This is high rate of sedimentation because animal can shade sediment very easily, and this is very low rate of sediment where the animal cannot shade very easily. You see there are three types of coral here. Serioid coral, where the balls are common, it's very difficult to shade. Glocoid coral, the animal can shade sediment through the corallites. And meandroid coral, when there are valleys, the animals can shade corals through the valleys, where is fastest movement down the valley. So rate of sediment can be understood. Then there are some examples here. There are glocoid corals, and then there is a meandroid corals. So this is one example which is called Polygonostria, which is made like this, and the sediment can be shed very easily. You can have several patterns like this. Even there are two patterns between these two, but the more radial will be more efficient. So increasing light intensity, we can understand this is less light and this is more light condition. And this can also be because of the turbidity, and the growth bands can be also developed. With the change of light intensity, we can have more vertical growth and less lateral growth, like that. Then temperature can be understood with the help of isotopic study. Hermatopic corals are found in this temperature, as we discussed. And then oxygen isotope is a sensitive indicator for evaluating seawater temperature. So climate, temperature is one of the parameters of climate. If you study temperature, you can study the climatic condition. And another parameter is the humidity of climate. And if there is more humidity, means more runoff, means more sediments coming to the basin. So if you have more sediment coming to the basin, there will be less light condition. So on the basis of these two parameters, one can understand temperature. And this is the best way to understand temperature. We took one case of this favia, we cut into slab, and then we have taken samples from each growth rings here, and then we have seen the oxygen and carbon isotope, and then we have measured the thicknesses, and these are different time intervals. It is written here. This was collected in 1998. So we have 1999. So we went back. Each coral growth ring is represent 1 year, and gradually one can understand the temperature on the basis of oxygen and carbon isotope. If the temperature is very high, there will be bleaching of coral because the symbiotic algae, which is also responsible for giving color to coral, is photosensitive. And if the temperature is high, then the zooxanthellae can bail out of the coral and it becomes white. So see in the front four here, it is a bleached coral and this is normal coral. So zooxanthellae cannot live in high temperature unless the symbiosis is able to adapt to global warming. So temperature can also be understood with this. And then now at the end, we have to, because it is so important that we can reconstruct environmental parameter, and it can give so many it influences the economy of the people living along the coastal area, coral. So we have to, and it also improves the environmental condition. So for many organisms, so we have to protect it. So keeping in view the rapid decline, the United States established Coral Reef Task Force, CRTF, to protect and conserve the coral. And one management technique is to create marine national park or marine protected areas. And I told you in Saurashtra we have one marine national park which is called Narara Lake. This is lake, or it's not lake, but it is lagoon, Narara Lagoon. And then we must know that coral takes so much time to grow that if we don't protect it now, we will destroy all the coral reefs. So I have jotted down 10 easy steps to protect coral reef. One is to conserve water. You use less water so that there is less runoff. Help reduce pollution. Don't use lot of fossil fuel so that the pollution can be reduced. Chemical pesticides that we put in our lawn is very dangerous for corals. So although you may live thousands of miles away from a coral reef ecosystem, these products flow into water system and pollute the ocean. Then dispose your trash properly. Then support reef-friendly businesses. Ask the fishing, boating, hotel, aquarium, dive, snorkeling operators how they protect the reef. Be sure that they take care of living coral reef ecosystem. Then plant trees. We have to plant more trees, less runoff will be. Then practice safe, responsible diving, snorkeling. Then volunteers for coral reef cleaning up. Then contact your government representative. Then spread the word. Share your own excitement at learning how important the planet's coral reef are to us and intricate global ecosystem. And then finally, there is a protection of coral because by not using oxybenzone. Oxybenzone is a chemical in sunscreen, and when people use this sunscreen and then they swim to the coral reef and touch the coral, the oxybenzene has a toxic effect on young corals and causes endocrine disruption, DNA damage, and death of corals. So these disruptions can also cause cancerous tumors, birth defect, and other development disorders. So the not to use oxybenzene or not to use sunscreen with oxybenzene is very important, very significant. So this is all about coral. Thank you very much. And you can see it is a paradise.